What's up, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, DFS. My name is Sia Nejad, and of course, as always, at 11 o'clock on Thursday, I'm joined by Meg Shoup and Mike McClure. We got a big show. We got some bye weeks, so we're going to be maybe diving in a little deeper, but less games to cover. We won't keep you too long. Meg, how you doing?
Well, I'm fighting a cold, but I'm powering through, and I'm ready to give out some winners today. So I'm doing good. I'm ready to talk about week 5.
A lot of people fighting a cold. The
Uh huh.
allergies kind of rolling
Got my
around
cough drops
too.
ready. Yeah.
So we got to take care of ourselves. Let's get some. Well, let's all drink some extra like vegetable stuff or consume more veggies or something. That's always a
I'm pounding the
pretty,
vitamin C.
pretty decent deterrent. Mike, how you doing?
Doing well. Fired up for the slate. I think we've got a number of very high-scoring games. It's going to feel like some of the DFS days of old. We've seen a lot of low-scoring football early to start this season, but I think we have some real high-scoring games this week.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to get into it in just a second. I do want to remind everybody the contest link is already in the chat. It will be in the podcast and YouTube description as well. So join that for $5. We had a winner that was a friend of mine last week. He was very excited about it. Alex won last week's tournament. Congratulations to him. We got a 10-game slate. We got 6 games at 1 o'clock, 4 games at 4 o'clock. But now, before we get into the games, it's time for the Hellman Stack segment where we discuss the QB and receiver duos to keep an eye on this coming weekend. Brought to you by Hellman's Real Mayonnaise. Mayo dip, be creamy, and your quarterbacks dreamy. All right, let's start with quarterbacks. Mike, we're going to give out your top 3, and we're going to give out our cheat sheets at the end of the show. But if you had to pick a stack right now, what would it be?
It's going to be Jordan Love to someone. As far as where you go, I think that there's definitely a plethora of options. You can talk about the tight end. Tucker Kraft, I think, is going to be one of the more obvious choices. Tight end's been kind of a wasteland this year. So I do love Jordan Love in this particular matchup. Jaden Reed would be my second choice, but you can look at Dontavian Wicks. You can look across the board, mostly going to be focused on stacking up Jordan Love in many, many different ways this week.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, Meg, there's quarterbacks like Jordan Love, like Brock Purdy, like Geno Smith, where I'm not exactly sure who to stack. Like, there's great value with Jaden Reed, not so much Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Tucker Kraft, but also Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs. I'm not exactly sure what to do with some of those scenarios, but we'll get into that later. Give us your favorite stack.
Well, I love Mike's answer, but I'm going to go Brock Purdy to Deebo Samuel and George Kittle if you want. You can single stack it or double stack it, but I like the 49ers this week against the Cardinals, and I just love the passing game matchup for Purdy and company. So give me them. I will make a little asterisk and note that if Flacco is in, I really do love Flacco Pittman down stack. So that's an asterisk.
Yeah, we'll talk about that game later too. That is such an interesting scenario. If you see any injury news breaking, again, we're Thursday live at 11 o'clock. Go ahead and put it in the chat. If we see it, we'll tell you, but maybe you guys and girls see it in the chat before we do. So drop it in there if you can. We'll wait on my stack because I'm kind of still deciding. I like the 2 that you all just mentioned. I really like Jordan Love and Brock Purdy this week, but we'll get to more stacks when we get to our cheat sheets. And when we talk about every one of these games, this has been the Hellman Stack segment brought to you by Hellman's Real Mayonnaise. Just like these QB and wide receiver duos, tailgate snacking and Hellman's mayonnaise make the perfect combo, bringing out the rich and creamy taste to all of your game day dishes. So give it a try, and may your game day be delicious with Hellman's Real Mayonnaise. Shop at your local Walmart, Kroger, or grocery store and add some extra deliciousness to your game day dishes this football season. All right, let's get into a key game in the 1 o'clock slate that I think a lot of people want to play. Mike, I'm going to start with you. Bills coming off looking pretty bad against the Ravens. They face another good defense. They go to Houston. This total is in the 47.5, 48-point range. Your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this one's awesome in terms of real life football. I think there's a lot to love here. As far as getting there in DFS, I think the thing that becomes immediately apparent is just price points can be a little more prohibitive when you're talking about guys like Josh Allen, CJ Stroud, and some of the big name receivers. Nico Collins has certainly established himself really as a true wide receiver number 1. So out of everything in this game, that is definitely the first piece that I would be getting to would be Nico Collins. After that, I think you could sprinkle on Keon Coleman. I know it's highly speculative. I do think this projects as a game that he's going to have to be involved because I think it's going to be competitive. At 4,700, it's not the true slam dunk value play where you're talking $3K, $3,500 wide receivers. But as great as this game looks on paper and high scoring, competitive, all the boxes you want checked, I'm not finding myself getting a ton in this game outside of Nico Collins, believe it or not. So it's very interesting. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say on it and maybe how you're building around it. But personally, I'm not getting to a bunch here because of the price points.
So Meg, I got to go to you, but I'm looking at the comments. Thanks everybody for being here. Jason Hellman, of course, is in the chat. He has the extra N in his name, so we know he's not actually related to the franchise. Meg, let me ask you this, because I agree with Mike. I'm not really getting to this game, but I am considering, because I think Josh Allen's going to be relatively underowned, like maybe in terms of relative to where he should be. I am considering like a pretty cost-effective Josh Allen, Keon Coleman stack, 4,700, 7,700. I don't know that I'd want to have a run back in that game. Obviously, Nico Collins makes sense, but 7,700, there's just such value at the receiver position that I don't know that I want to force Nico specifically. I'm not playing Joe Mixon. So in spite of this total and in spite of the implied totals, 24 on one side, 23 on the other, I think I'm largely off of this game. How about you?
I mean, of course, you love Nico. He's the best receiver in the league right now, so have some interest there. But there's a lot of other spots I like this week that I'm not sure how much I'll get to him. You got the Diggs revenge game. You could play that angle. What I actually do like is if Joe Mixon is good to go, which we don't know yet. So if Joe Mixon is in, I am intrigued in it because we saw what teams are doing to the Buffalo defense on the ground. I mean, Derrick Henry destroyed them. A chain who has not been very successful on the ground, it really ran on them. So you have been able to run on the Bills this year. And so if Mixon's in, I think he could be a contrarian, a lower owned play because he's not cheap. And so I have some interest there to run all over the Bills.
Okay. I think, Mike, does any of that change your mind? I mean, I want to move on to the next game, but I'm just curious. Like, it seems to me that we're just not as excited about this game as we typically would be. And Mike, that might be partly because we've got a lot of high totals and a lot of value in the rest of the games that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, it's mostly a product of, again, price point and some of the other options. You know, when you talk about the Green Bay situation, I think that one's pretty clear. As far as, you know, Mixon being in, I think that it would be a great thing because then I wouldn't be forced to look at Cam Akers any longer the rest of the season, which would be fantastic. Other than that, I really don't think that I can get to much here because it's very difficult to pick out, you know, is it Nico getting in the end zone twice or is it Diggs in the revenge game? And then on the Buffalo side, I mean, yeah, if you want to stack Josh Allen and pay up for it, I think it's fine. But you see, he's more expensive than Lamar Jackson, and what we know is going to be a competitive game there. And Lamar's got a clear leg up in terms of rushing. So I can't really get to anything in this game. Like I said, it may be a standalone piece on Nico, a standalone piece on Diggs. But for me, it's a classic one that I want to watch, but not really play a bunch of DFS around.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on to Carolina getting some points, +4 at the Bears. This one's floating between 41 and 42. Not a super exciting game listen, people aren't really going to be super invested in watching this game or playing a lot of DFS in this game, except for the fact that, Meg, I'll start with you. DeAndre Swift came off like a pretty, I would say, surprising game with all the work that he got. We've got DeAndre Swift at 5,700, which seems pretty cost effective given that he gets to play Carolina and that it does look like the Bears may be a little bit more committed to the running game than people thought. I'm not really interested in the receivers on the Bears side, but maybe you can convince me otherwise. We got Chuba Hubbard still getting the Lions share here, or the Panthers share, if you will, at 6,100. Don't love really a lot of Panthers against this Bears defense. Deontay Johnson, 6,100, still value. Xavier Legette, 5,100. What do you like in this one?
Yeah, I mean, and first of all, another revenge game. We have DJ Moore going against the Panthers. That's kind of interesting. He's coming low ownership, but after watching them last week and what I thought was a pristine spot against the Rams, I just can't go back to that passing game. And then Swift, I can't really play a chalky DeAndre Swift either from what I'm seeing because of his value. He's coming in right now looking at likely high ownership, so I'm not interested in Swift. I do think there's still good value on Hubbard and Deontay, but I don't know that I'm going to get to them. So with all that said, I don't know that I'm going to get to a lot in this game.
All right, Mike, what do we like in this game, if anything? Are we playing DeAndre Swift? And if people are playing cash, and I do want to say a lot of people who are playing cash are messaging me saying, 4 weeks in a row, I've done well in cash. Would DeAndre Swift be in that conversation or really in any conversation?
Yeah, I think he could be in that conversation. For me, it's going to be a wait and see a bit until we know more about the running back situation for the Colts, because Trey Sermon is the same price, would have a good workload in that game. Yeah, I'm not getting a ton of Swift. He's definitely in the player pool, but not getting a ton there. I think my real interest in this game is simply Deontay Johnson and then potentially the Bears defense, which I know they're playing against one another. Chuba Hubbard, you could argue, should be in the player pool still. The price point hasn't really moved at 6,100. I actually prefer him to Swift, even though the defense on the Bears side is very strong. But in terms of Deontay Johnson, I think you just have to acknowledge the target share, right? Like, I believe it's 27 targets in the 2 games with Andy Dalton. As long as that's the situation, I think you have to play him. And you do need to acknowledge that he's run extremely hot in terms of scoring touchdowns. He scored touchdown in each of the last 2 games. But even without the touchdown, if you're talking 13, 14 targets, you should be looking at a performance of 7 catches, 70 yards as a floor. So I think that Deontay Johnson's definitely in play here.
Okay, Deontay Johnson in play. Let's move on to a game that I'm going to be at. The Cleveland Browns facing Meg. Are you going to be at this game by any chance?
I'm not. I don't have tickets to any home games yet, but hopefully that changes. But that's awesome that you're going.
It is. So my sister is visiting from Australia, and every time she comes, if it's football season, she likes to go. Her nephew from obviously lives in Australia, is a big NFL fan. It's starting to get, percolating over in Australia. I think we even saw news that the NFL might head there in a couple of years for a game. So I don't know. CBS, maybe I can go over there and cover it. Not on my dime. Hey, who knows? We can dream, right? Cleveland Browns, speaking of dreaming, Washington looks great. They host the Cleveland Browns. I have it as a 3.5-point favorite. They're down to 3 in most markets, I believe. It's about a 43.5 point total. Meg, I'll start with you. I think there are pieces in this game that are interesting. I don't think I'm getting to Jaden Daniels this week. I'm really not liking anything on the Washington side. I think a sneaky play could be Amari Cooper on the Cleveland Browns side, and that's about it for me. What are you thinking in this one?
Similar, that not interested in a ton. Washington will really be tested against the Browns defense, so it'll be interesting. So I don't think I'm going to go there at their prices against this playing into this Browns defense. I obviously, even though Kyler and Marvin Harrison did not get there last week, and I do not think Deshaun Watson is a good quarterback anymore, and wish that Jameis Winston was in, I still think I would take some shots on Amari Cooper because it doesn't look like he's coming with ownership. And I don't think the Washington secondary improved over 1 week. So I still think we can play Amari Cooper, especially at low ownership against the Washington secondary.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think Amari Cooper is the potential sort of ceiling play that you might want to throw into a couple of lineups. Mike, do you agree with that? Is there anybody else to play in this one?
Yeah, I think that Deshaun Watson to Amari would be fine. Yeah. I think Deshaun Watson's, salary at 5,300, I don't think he's a great quarterback. He probably shouldn't have the starting job still. But the fact is he does still have a little upside in the rushing category, particularly around the goal line. And I do think this is a game that could be competitive. We could see some points on both sides. So I do like Deshaun Watson quite a bit here to Amari Cooper, but I also could get to Jerome Ford. And I think Jerome Ford's an excellent pivot from someone wanting to play DeAndre Swift. We'll see what happens with the Indy situation and potentially having Trey Sermon in there. But I do think Jerome Ford is someone that could be playable in this matchup as well. So I do have a little interest here. As far as the Commanders side, I'm definitely not getting any Commanders so far. I think Brian Robinson Jr. is okay. The price point is now caught up all the way up to 6,600. So I really don't. Yeah, I'm looking through. I'm not getting really any Commanders of any note. So it'd be Browns side or nothing here. And it would be that Cooper from Watson first and then Jerome Ford secondary.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Jared Dilly in the chat says Watson is horrible. Nobody's disagreeing with that. I mean, the thing is he's 5,300 and he's going against a Washington defense that we know is quite bad. I mean, they showed up last week, but I don't think this defense is going to show up like that week to week. And Deshaun Watson, 5,300, Amari Cooper at 6,200. It seems like a stack that just makes almost too much sense. And here's the thing. I think both of these guys would be priced a little bit higher, or at least be getting more attention from an ownership standpoint. If that long bomb touchdown to Amari Cooper, which should have counted, if that had actually counted, our eyebrows would raise a little bit more at these prices. So I think we're actually kind of getting a discount because of a kind of a bad call and we know Amari Cooper can, he's had a kind of a checkered season so far, but he can get deep, and historically he can put up those huge gains. and it wouldn't surprise me at all if Watson's completely locked in on him. So that's an oversight by me. I think Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper is a great stack. Meg, your response?
Yeah, well, I absolutely agree with that. My eyebrows raised when you said that because I thought about that callback play, and we'd all be thinking about this a whole lot differently had that call the touchdown stood. So absolutely agree with that. While I'm talking, I do want to give a shout out to Mike. Loved his call last week on when you play Jaden Daniels, Brian Robinson was an excellent combo last week. So good call on that, Mike. And while we're talking, I hope you see you and your family see a Washington win, Sia.
Thank you very much. By the way, I followed Mike's advice on Jaden Daniels too. And in the main slate, I don't remember. There was nothing eye-popping for me. But the afternoon slate, the afternoon slate, I did really well stacking up that game in particular. And I cashed it. I did like 3 kind of like higher end for me, like single entry contests. Mm-hmm. And I cashed in all of them. The problem was I had Rashee Rice in all of them. So I did so well to cash in them. But if Rashee Rice obviously had stayed healthy for that game, I think I would have been like, it would have been my best week. It wouldn't have even been close. So, I mean, that's what happens. Hopefully Rashee Rice is not out for the season. Hoping for some good news for him. Good news for the Dolphins, not so much. Let's move to that game. Dolphins at the Patriots. I think this one, Meg, we're probably going to talk about pretty quickly because I'm not playing Ramondre Stevenson personally. I worry about his fumble issues. Antonio Gibson looks pretty good. In fact, I think if you wanted to be super contrarian in a huge contest and play Gibson at 5,100, I don't hate that. But listen, on either side of the ball, there's no way you can play a Patriots receiver. Achane, I don't even know if he's going to be healthy. Maybe if he's not, and if Mostert is out, then maybe Jalen Wright at 4,700 makes sense. Not playing any receivers. Meg, anything in this one?
It would only be that if the Miami running back room was thin, that would be the only way. Other than that, no, this game is an absolute pass for me.
Mike, is it a pass for you? And does Jalen Wright make sense if Wilson is hobbled, if Achane is hobbled, and if Mostert is hobbled?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a little sense. I'm not going to get there, though. The only thing I could get to, honestly, is Tyler Huntley. And it's simply because of the rushing upside and the willingness to use him as a runner in the red zone. But it's not been pretty. And I think I really just want to take this opportunity to go back to Deshaun Watson a little bit. Because you look at the price point on Tyler Huntley at 5,600. Tyler Huntley on this slate is more expensive than Matthew Stafford and Deshaun Watson. And Daniel Jones and Joe Flacco. So it's essentially Huntley's basically priced appropriately, but there's just so many options there. Even Geno Smith's only 300 more than Tyler Huntley. Yeah. So I really can't make the argument to get to anything. If you were just set on playing something here for some reason, I think Tyler Huntley is the only option in the game.
Yeah, and you just gave about 6 different reasons why he wouldn't be the pick because of all those. I mean, you mentioned Geno Smith 300 more. I'm finding that 300, and there's a lot of quarterbacks that you mentioned that are below him that I love more than Tyler Huntley. We got a couple more 1:00 games to tackle, including a really good one coming up next, Ravens and Bengals. And actually the next one's good too, Colts and Jaguars. We're going to do it right after this message from our partners.
It's a team almost too good to be true.
You guys ain't ready for us.
Kick your game day off right as the Tops team tackles all the biggest headlines around the league.
Who's got 2 thumbs and loves this next segment?
Sunday mornings on CBS Sports Network.
We're back on Fantasy Football Today, DFS. We got 2 more 1:00 games. If you're in the chat, just a reminder, hit the like button if you could, and don't forget the link to the contest is in the chat. Just scroll up to the top. You'll be able to click it. And if you're listening to the podcast, jump into that right now as you're listening. Hit the podcast description, hit the link, and join the $5 contest. All right, Mike. Ravens, Bengals. This one, I'm going to end up not having a lot of investment in, but I completely understand the argument. If you want to do a Lamar stack or Lamar solo or a Joe Burrow stack, how are you handling this game?
I think this game's going to be fascinating. Definitely one to watch. Cincinnati, I made this call out a couple times over different platforms. I think Cincinnati is a good team. I think they're the classic team, and we see this a lot more in basketball than anything. They're a team that's going to play to the level of the competition lined up across from them, no matter who it is. It doesn't matter how bad the team is or how good they are. They are going to find a way to compete, which is going to be a great thing here. I think this game is going to be extremely, extremely competitive. So I love Lamar Jackson once again. It's hard not to. The addition of Derrick Henry, we've seen it now in almost every single game, once per game minimum, where the camera crew and everyone has no idea who has the football at the line of scrimmage. The defense, the camera crew, everyone. And it's because they're so good at that read with Derrick Henry in the backfield because of the respect that Derrick Henry commands. So I love Lamar. I think anytime you get Lamar in a competitive game, he's going to find a way to get there, whether it's through the legs or through the air. You look at the game log, you see a drastic difference in terms of passing attempts. Some games we're talking 13, 14. Some games we're talking 40. And I think that they can do it both ways. So I love me some Lamar here. I would pair him with Zay Flowers. No one's going to do it, but I like Zay Flowers. The price point, $6,400. Nobody is getting there. I think this projects as a game where Zay Flowers could be right back to double-digit targets, though. So I do like this spot for Zay Flowers to Lamar Jackson to Zay Flowers. And then I love Jamar Chase on the other side as well.
In or out, Mike, on Derrick Henry?
I will play a little bit of Derrick Henry. Yeah, I'm far more interested in this game overall. I won't play Henry with anyone else. It'll be just Henry on his own if I play a Derrick Henry lineup, but definitely still in on Henry here.
All right, Meg. So we have, Joe Burrow on the other side. Obviously, Jamar Chase at 8K. T. Higgins getting a lot of looks, got a lot of looks last week. He seems to be a value at 6K. Are you interested in this game, first off, and how would you be playing it?
I am interested in this game, and I'm actually interested on both sides. I am interested in the Bengals passing attack, so I don't mind. I like Burrow stacks, whether you want to go Burrow, Chase, Higgins, or just Burrow, Chase, or you could go Burrow, Higgins. I mean, he got a good amount of targets last week. So yeah. I like the Burrow stacks, period. I think you would rather attack the Ravens through the air than the ground. And obviously we don't know the game script, but they could be playing from a negative game script. So I do like that. And then, I'm just going to go back to on Derrick Henry. He was one of my most drafted running backs in best ball. I've been playing him all season. Last week it certainly worked out. And, I see this as another really great spot for him. You can run on the Bengals, and why wouldn't they keep feeding the big dog? So I absolutely love Derrick Henry this week.
Mike, if you were playing Lamar Jackson, let's say you're doing 3 lineups, would one of them be Lamar naked by himself?
It's possible. Give me 30 seconds, well, not 30, 10 seconds, and I can tell you what some of them look like. Yeah, it looks like number 1 is Lamar naked. The others do have Flowers, but yeah, about half and half. Half have Flowers, half are just Lamar naked.
All right. And Meg, would you be interested? You might have said this, but in a Joe Burrow stack. You said yes to that, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I'm definitely interested in a Burrow stack. I mean, there are obviously other stacks I like, but I definitely am interested in a Burrow stack.
Okay. I think I'm largely going to be off this one, but it's tough. I mean, this game has a high total for a reason. Let me ask one more question because somebody asked this in the chat. Cash game quarterback. Meg, would you play Lamar or Joe Burrow as a cash game quarterback?
I think you actually could play either as a cash game, but I could see Lamar with obviously the rushing floor.
And Mike, same question. Knowing that there's a lot of value at the quarterback position, would you be paying up for Lamar, for example, in cash?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I may not be paying up all the way in cash there. It might be someone like Jordan Love. Could be all the way down to Deshaun Watson and then just load up everywhere else.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a number of options. And then before we move on, I do want to call out just tight end Eric All, 2,700, way too cheap in this matchup. We know, I saw in the chat, the reason why I like Jamar Chase a lot here, the targets haven't been great. We're only talking 6, 7 a game. I think that number is 12 minimum. I think they're going to throw the football a ton because I think they're neutral or trailing no matter what in this game. And Eric All is just far too cheap at 2,700.
Okay, let's move on to a game that I have a lot of interest in, actually. And this is one where you have to wait for injury reports. I've already taken the Jaguars -2.5. This is clicked up to 3 in most places. I put the -2.5 on Sportsline Sunday night, Monday morning. Anyway, Anthony Richardson, Joe Flacco, we're not sure. Trey Sermon looks to be the lead back. He's not the discounted price that I kind of hoped for. I think DraftKings was kind of ahead of it, knowing that Jonathan Taylor probably wasn't going to play. Sermon's 5,700. Michael Pittman, 6K, Josh Downs, 5,100. I think they come into play, obviously, if Joe Flacco is playing. Maybe if Anthony Richardson is playing, but not so much. Other side of the ball, there's some receivers that I think have a lot of people's interest, including Brian Thomas, Christian Kirk, and then, of course, Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby. There's kind of a cloudy situation there. Mike, I start with you. Any interest in this one?
This one's really tough for me until we get a little more news. And I'll give you a play that I think is interesting. That's definitely a kind of a plug your nose special. I don't mind playing Trevor Lawrence at 5,700. I think he's got a little upside here. He hasn't flashed a ton in the running game, but he does still have it a little bit if needed. But you talk about a must-win game, desperation spot. Season is definitely over for them if they don't win this game. But if they do win it, considering the fact that it's a divisional game, then they get the benefit. And I say benefit because they are familiar with playing back-to-back weeks in London coming up. They can salvage this season. We know the weapons exist. And I think this Indy defense is certainly gettable. So I actually don't mind Trevor Lawrence playing him here if you're looking for a value quarterback. But as far as pinpointing receivers, like I like Christian Kirk. I think he's got a ton of upside. The range of outcomes are massive just because of the way they distribute the football. But I also could make the same argument for ETN. No one's going to play him. No one's going to play Trevor Lawrence. I think that a Lawrence stack could definitely get there.
I totally agree. I am the probably biggest Lawrence detractor, but when you're facing this Colts defense that has a lot of injuries and already a bad secondary, Meg, Trevor to Brian or Brian Thomas or to Christian Kirk makes a lot of sense to me. Any interest in this game on either side of the ball?
Yeah, like you said, both defenses would love to attack these defenses. So I do have interest in this game. On the Jag side, I actually really like Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, we're seeing that he looks to be that guy, even in a offense that has kind of been inept and a letdown, and obviously the disaster that a coach that could get fired. But Brian Thomas looks like the real deal, so I don't mind him. And I think at his price, he might not be that high owned against a Colts secondary that we know we can take advantage of. So love that. And then like Mike said, for me, it all hinges on the Joe Flacco, the injury news. If Joe Flacco is in, he is going to probably become one of my favorite stacks because I just think that he can attack that Jaguars defense that we know quarterbacks like Allen and others have been tearing up. So I love Flacco, Pittman, Downs, and I will likely only play Pittman and Downs if Flacco is in.
I totally agree. I'm playing. So let me ask you this: if Flacco is in, are you playing, like if you could only make one lineup with the Colts, would it be a double stack or would you just throw in Michael Pittman or Josh Downs? Who would you actually play?
I actually made a Flacco lineup for fun as like a shell lineup, and I loved a double stack with Pittman and Downs, bringing BTJ back. So.
I love it. BTJ, of course, Brian Thomas. He's so good. He's already getting like the acronym treatment, which I
think
love.
That came through best ball. There was always already the BTJ nerdy talk. So yeah, just letting it roll.
Nerds live here, me included. BTJ is 5,900, Pittman 6K, and like I said, Josh Downs 5,100. Again, we got to wait for more news there. Real quick though, Mike, you did mention Trey Sermon. It's 5,700, not the discount I was hoping for. Jags run defense, not as bad as their pass defense. Just to be clear, both these pass defenses are pretty bad. Run defense is better than their pass defenses. Any interest in Trey Sermon?
I mean, I think he'll certainly be in the player pool. Definitely not the discount that you want, but will definitely be involved in the red zone if and when they get there, no matter who's playing quarterback. So, yeah, I think it's fine. It's definitely not a lock button play though.
Okay. Let's get over to the first of 4 o'clock games. This one I have a lot of interest in, and I think most people do. It's about a 49.5 point total. Cardinals getting a touchdown, a 7-point underdog in San Francisco. I mean, where do we start, right? Meg, I'll start with you. Brock Purdy, 6,200. Mason now starting to really get that quality pricing treatment, but it's probably not enough at 7,400. Debo, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, all in play on the other side of the ball. I think Kyler Murray is very much in play, especially coming off a dud against Washington. I could see him having one of those pop games. Marvin Harrison, 7,500. Michael Wilson, Dortch in that 4K range. Trey McBride, we'll have to see if he's coming back. What are you gauging here? What do you like?
It was my Hellman stack, and I'm going to stick with it. It's Purdy, Debo, and then if you want to add Kittle to it, I don't mind that as well. So Purdy, Debo, Kittle is what I'm focused on. Like you said, the price has come up on Mason, but I think you can still obviously play him. He's likely playing from a very positive game script, so don't mind that either. But I just see that this is a spot for 49ers at home to just put up a lot of points, and I just want pieces of that offense.
Yeah, Mike, the other side of the ball, I'm curious who you like on the Niners. I mean, I think my favorite two, and it's kind of contradicting itself, but Jordan Mason and Brock Purdy, I could see me rolling out some lineups, particularly in the afternoon slate, where I just play Brock Purdy and Jordan Mason and hope that they even exceed their implied point total, which, by the way, is 28. Maybe they get to 35 or 40. Like, I could absolutely see that. I'm just curious on the other side of the ball. Let's start with Arizona. I don't think a lot of people are going to play Marvin Harrison. I'm not super stoked to play a lot of Marvin Harrison, but he does seem like a quality contrarian play. Is there anybody on Arizona you'd play?
I'm looking through it now. I have a ton of San Francisco, not a lot of Arizona. I'm not super confident in the distribution and where everything's coming from.
Yeah.
I'm still scrolling. I'm not getting really. Marvin Harrison barely sneaks in. I'm not getting any. That's the only Arizona Cardinals player that sneaks in the top 1,000 teams. So not getting a lot there. I love the 49ers side. I think it's a perfect situation for what I would call a mini onslaught, which is going to be Purdy, Mason, and Samuel. I think that's the majority of where the expected production is going to come from. So a lot of my builds are getting Purdy, Jordan Mason, and Deebo Samuel all in the same lineup.
So, and that, I'm assuming that has no run back.
Yeah, no run back.
Okay, and it's important for people to understand that the game has changed a little bit and we've talked about this on other shows, but perhaps not the last couple, where you don't necessarily have to force a run back. Even if you think the other team's going to score a bunch of points, there might be more value in other places with similar game environments that you don't have to force a run back, especially where in this game we don't exactly know where the targets are going among all of the receivers. Okay, so Mike, if it's Purdy, let's say you're playing a lineup that's not that mini onslaught, Purdy, Mason, Deebo, what would be another way to build that lineup on the San Fran side?
Just Mason only or Deebo only, or both of them with a different quarterback. I think that Mason and Deebo are essentially going to be core plays here. I will probably have them in nearly every lineup.
Yeah. When we get to our cheat sheet, my favorite stat, it's funny because just to spoil a little bit of it, I think my favorite chalk play is Jordan Mason. And I haven't really decided on the favorite stack because I personally just want to play. And Mike, let me just bounce this off you because it's roster construction related. And I love when you kind of like go deep here. There are some lineups where I want to play Purdy, Mason, Deebo. And there's some lineups where I might just play Purdy and just go to other games. Is that a bad move, or should I be avoiding that? Should I attach him to at least somebody in this slate?
So the way I would play it is, yes, if you're playing Brock Purdy only and you want to play that, then I would skinny stack it with like one of the pass catchers on the other side. Okay. I think the scenario where it's really Brock Purdy only that's popping is the scenario where the game is like really, really, really a shootout. The scenario that I'm building for with Purdy to Mason and Samuel is just the scenario where it may be like a 30-7 kind of game where you're capitalizing on almost all the scoring. So I personally, I like having, if I'm playing Purdy, I'm playing him with one of Deebo or Mason and likely both.
Meg, I think I'm doing a lot of Purdy Mason. Object or you like that?
No, I like that. I'm totally co-sign that. That works.
All right. Well, we got 3 more games to cover than our cheat sheets. Mike's top 3 at each position, and then maybe just a word about Thursday night football tonight, Falcons, Buccaneers, showdown style. We're going to hear all about it right after this message from our partners. We are back on Fantasy Football Today, DFS. Hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Spotify or Apple. And if you have an extra, literally 7 seconds, scroll down a little bit and hit 5 stars and maybe say a couple of words. It actually takes more like 1 second, but if you want to mention a couple of words about how you like the podcast or you love Meg or Mike or Nada producing this show, or maybe even me, you could just say, hey, this is a great show, and then hit enter, and that's it. It really does take 7 seconds or less to do that. We always appreciate stuff like that. All right, Raiders, Broncos. Meg, I'm going to start with you. I don't think there's a lot of interest in this game for reasons I don't need to say out loud. Courtland Sutton, however, at 5,500 is interesting because he does seem to be a target hog of Bo Nix to the extent those targets actually make it to a pass catcher's hands. Trey Tucker, always interesting at 4,100, but in this game environment, I don't know that I'm getting there. Maybe I'd look at Trey Tucker in like the prop market instead. Anything you like in this one?
I think you nailed it. Those would be the two that you'd consider. But I think with this game total and game environment, this is a game's a pass for me.
Yeah, Mike, one thing I left out, well, obviously Denver defense is in play, but Javonte Williams is 5,200. I mean, I suppose you could pay down for him. There's just nothing that I'm super psyched about in this one. How about you?
Yeah, nothing super exciting. Javonte would be the only call out that makes sense to me. And if I did that, I'm pairing him with the Denver defense. Definitely going to have that correlation, but if you want to speculate on Bowers, I think it's fine. I don't have a problem with it. There's a lot of, tight ends kind of a wasteland. I do love three value plays at tight end, but is it going to shock me if Brock Bowers, has 9 catches, 80 yards and a touchdown? No, not at all. I think that it's fine, but at 5,500, I think I like the value a little better elsewhere.
Yeah. And we're going to hear about the value tight ends when Mike gives out his top 3, which we'll do in about 5 minutes. But first, we got a couple of games to cover that have a lot of people's interest. Both of these ones start at 4:25. The first 2 4:00 games start at 4:05. Giants at the Seahawks. Mike, I'm going to start with you on this one. Geno Smith and company look really good. And by company, I mean Kenneth Walker, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Tyler Lockett, Noah Fant, Jake Bobo was catching balls. This, and they're getting a Giants defense that isn't exactly formidable. I think on the Giants side, obviously we got to check on Malik Neighbors, probably not getting there. Wan'Dale Robinson, an absolute target monster, especially in a negative game script. I could see him piling up another 6, 7, 8, 9 catches potentially. I think there's a lot to like. The total is kind of low in this game, which is interesting. So, Mike, what do we like in this one?
Yeah, love the Seattle side. You need some more information. If Malik Neighbors plays, it definitely helps this game be a lot more competitive. I'm not sure he's going to play, honestly. He hasn't cleared the concussion protocol yet. I think that this team will probably be relatively conservative with him in terms of trying to rush him back. I know he wants to get out there. But they certainly don't want to have any sort of lingering concerns when you're talking about a concussion with such a young superstar. So we'll see. I'm in the camp that believes he may not play. And if that happens, this line will go north of 6.5. It'll be 7 or 7.5. If he plays, though, I like Wan'Dale Robinson, and mostly because Neighbors just takes so much attention. And I think he'd be the obvious bring back. I like Kenneth Walker. The price point's very fair, 6,800. And I like DK Metcalf. I don't think the Giants have anyone that's going to stop DK Metcalf. The only thing that would stop DK Metcalf would be the Seahawks being up by 3 touchdowns in the first half.
Yeah, and that could partly, Meg, be due to Kenneth Walker just running all over the Giants. I mean, he was so impressive last week. I won a couple of fantasy matchups that I honestly, if I'm being candid, should not have won because he just went off for 30-plus points. With that said, I mean, I kind of like it at 6,800, particularly in a what appears to be a positive game script. I agree with Mike, though. This game has a lot more interest, and there's people in the chat saying this as well. It has a lot more interest if Malik Neighbors plays because, it's just not going to be competitive, I don't think, in the second half if he's not playing. Your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think you and Mike kind of covered it perfectly, and I feel the exact same way. I think it's unlikely he plays. I do have interest in Wan'Dale Robinson, just the targets he's getting, but I'm interested in the Seahawks looked amazing, and yeah, Walker looked amazing on Monday night. So I do have interest in Geno to DK Metcalf in Walker. But again, as Mike pointed out, we do then worry if Neighbors is out, the game script getting like too out of control for the Geno stack. So I was very interested in the Geno stack, but yeah, would be more interested in that, as everybody said, if Neighbors was in. If he's out, maybe just Walker.
Yeah, and I do think we need to keep an eye on, I don't think anybody's playing Devin Singletary, but I thought he did pop up with an injury. We got to keep an eye on that. Tyron Tracy at 4,300, it's really cheap. I still don't know if we'd be super excited about playing that. But, Mike, do we know? I mean, this is something I need to check on maybe as you're talking, but Devin Singletary's injury, does that seem serious? Does that seem like he's going to be held out?
I definitely could be. Looking at it, I think there's certainly a scenario where they're down both Neighbors and Singletary here.
Wow.
At that point, Tracy would be interesting. He has shown the ability to catch passes out of the backfield in limited work, but I think it could be a scenario where they're just peppering him with targets. So, yeah, definitely possible.
PvP Naked says, can't wait for Robinson 12 for 49. You're so right. I had
49 is optimistic. I was thinking like 29.
I had his I think yardage total. I think I gave that out on Sportsline during that game. I mean, he obviously hit it very, very easily, but yeah, this guy's just a target monster, which helps in DraftKings specifically because it's PPR. Of course, FanDuel just a half PPR. I don't think they've changed that. FanDuel still half PPR, as it might sound like I play all my DFS on DraftKings. All right. By the way, Mike, last thing. Kenneth Walker, in or out?
Definitely in.
Okay.
Definitely in.
And Mike, I assume you're also definitely in on the running back in this next game. Packers at the Rams, 49-point total. Packers favored by 3 going into Los Angeles. A lot to like on both sides of the ball, but I actually want to start with the Rams because I mentioned running back. Kyren Williams is 7,600. Are we starting there or are we avoiding him this week?
I wouldn't say I'm starting there, but I like him. Definitely in the player pool, not starting there. Will be playing him as part of Green Bay stacks, so I will be stacking this game heavily. Going to be way overweight the field on this one. So I do like Kyren Williams, but not the core piece that Jordan Mason is.
All right, we're going to come back to you on how you're playing this game. Meg, let me go to you on which side you like the best. It sounds to me like you like the Jordan Love side, and it's just a matter of who you're going to stack him with. So how do you think you're going to play this one?
Yeah, I loved Mike's call of Jordan Love and however you want to stack him because you could stack him in a variety of ways. I do love the price on Wicks, obviously, and his opportunity now with Watson out just at 5K. So, yeah, I think you could stack it in a variety of ways. And obviously we see just the upside of Jaden Reed. So, yeah, love Wicks. Love Wicks Reed, and then the tight end Kraft, and then I don't mind if you do want to play Jacobs as opposed to I'm seeing decent ownership on him, so I'll be interested to see what Jacobs' ownership comes in at, because if it was coming in lower, that could certainly be a way to approach it differently. But I love the Jordan Love stacks any way you want to approach it. I do think there's going to be some positive touchdown regression for Jacobs. He's just getting too much workload to not get there in the box. So I do see him hitting the end zone soon, and I'd like to be early to that, especially if he was lower owned, so I have some interest there too.
All right, I'm going to ask you, Meg, to rank these receivers with price considerations included. Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, in terms of how much you're going to play them.
Yeah, I would say with price considered, I would say Wicks, Reed, Doubs.
I kind of agree with that, Mike. How would you rank those in terms of how you're going to play him?
I'm still going to have Reed first just because he's so electric and the way they put the football in his hands. So I think he's going to have multiple carries in this game. I think they're just going to be creative there. So for me, it's just I think you're looking at one big play that likely goes the distance for him. So that's where I'm going to be. Having said all that, I think they're all in play. But I would rate them Reed, then Kraft, then probably Wicks.
Yeah, and I almost left Kraft out because he's so low priced that he almost seems like such a good play that I didn't even want to include him there. But Kraft definitely at 3,500 makes a ton of sense. We'll get to Mike's value tight ends in a second. Let's do it on the other side though, Mike. I'm going to start with you, and then we can touch on Josh Jacobs just for a second. Tutu Atwell, Jordan Whittington, Demarcus Robinson. I don't think Tyler Johnson's really in the conversation at this point. I mean, I could be wrong there. I kind of like Tutu Atwell, but I know Whittington's getting a lot of love. He's getting a lot of targets. But you mentioned how you like Jaden Reed first because of his big playability. I don't really see that with Jordan Whittington. I do see it with Tutu Atwell in terms of finding space, getting downfield with a big score. They're priced very similarly at 4,900, 4,600. So who do we like the best of those three wide receivers?
You know, I got a little bit more Whittington just on volume. I think the volume might be a touch better. I hear what you're saying on Atwell in terms of the upside. I do like both of them. I think they're both in play. I probably won't play both in the same lineup no matter what. It would be just essentially build a stack, pick one as the bring back. Still going to be very interested in Kyren Williams, though, as the running back is the primary bring back. I know he's a running back. He does still catch passes, and he's got just a ton of touchdown equity, just considering what that roster looks like right now. So if I had to rate him, it would be just slightly Whittington above Tutu Atwell. And I would say Parkinson at tight end is not far behind, just because I think Kraft is going to take all the ownership from this game, that I don't mind Parkinson.
Okay, I like that. Meg, I wanted to, actually, Mike, first, because I know you were a Josh Jacobs guy kind of earlier in the season. It does look like Emmanuel Wilson's starting to get a couple more carries. Any thoughts on Josh Jacobs in this one?
So I will play some Jacobs. I will not play him with Jordan Love. This to me is not a situation where you want to onslaught it that way. Is there a scenario where we get a pass interference penalty, or Reed goes down inside the 5 or 10 and this becomes Jacobs 2-touchdown game? Yeah, I think that's very, very possible. So if I play Jacobs, it would be a Jacobs lineup with no Green Bay pass catchers or QB.
And Meg, let's talk about Kyren Williams real quick. We know you like the Packers side. Would Kyren Williams be the primary bring back for you as well? And would you maybe add in a Rams receiver as well?
I agree with Mike. Kyren would be the primary Rams bring back, but I don't mind Tutu, Atwell, or Jordan Whittington. I'd say they'd be in the pool, but I think Kyren, his volume and touchdown equity, like Mike says, just amazing each and every week.
And just so everybody knows, when we're looking at combo props for these running backs like Kyren Williams, and by combo, I mean rushing and receiving, in terms of what the prop market deems is likely, Kyren Williams and Jordan Mason both lead with 101.5. Their rushing yards for both of them are in the 80s. So there's a reason people like Kyren and Jordan Mason in their matchups. Just to give you an idea of how far apart they are from everybody else, Aaron Jones, 93.5. That's an 8-yard difference. It's pretty large. Then it goes Derrick Henry. That's also 93.5 with Bijan Robinson, who's on Thursday Night Football, of course. And then there's a pretty big drop off from there. Josh Jacobs at 84.5. So, Josh Jacobs getting some respect. But the point I'm making here is Kyren and Jordan Mason are far and above the yardage that some of these other guys are on the main slate. Speaking of guys we want to play, let's go to the cheat sheet. Meg, I'm going to start with you. We do our stack, our chalk buy, our chalk fade, contrarian, and value. You can just give them all to me in a list right now.
Sure. Well, I covered the stack already. Purdy, Debo, Kittle. So I'll move on to my chalk buy is Derrick Henry. You can run all over the Bengals, and I think he continues to roll. Chalk fade is DeAndre Swift. Seems to be getting a lot of ownership because of his price and his performance last week. Swift is a fade for me. Contrarian play is if Joe Mixon is in, you can also run all over the Bills. And I think that's an interesting way to play that game. And then the value play, it's not an extreme value, but I think it's a value for his role, is Dontavian Wicks at 5K.
Yeah, you're going to hear in a second. I like Dontavian Wicks as well. My stack is, I've been still kind of debating, and I hate to repeat what you did, Meg, but I really do like Brock Purdy. So for me, it's probably going to be a lot of Brock Purdy. It's probably going to be a lot of Jaden Reed double stack. So Purdy, believe it or not, my stack is going to be with Mason more than it is going to be with Debo or Ayuk or Kittle. So not a conventional stack, but that's the stack I prefer. My chalk buy is Jordan Mason. Chalk fade. It did look like Deontay Johnson was getting some ownership. So, maybe I could be wrong there, but that was going to be my fade. Contrarian play is also Dontavian Wicks, but I'll say Tutu Atwell in that game, I think is going to be not super contrarian, but maybe a little bit contrarian relative to like a Jordan Whittington, for example. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But I like Tutu Atwell in that game at his price. Value play is going to be Tucker Kraft at 3,500. All right, Mike, top three at each position. Let's start at quarterback.
Jordan Love, number one for me. I just think the volume there. I love the matchup. The Rams, I think, are the worst defense in the NFL. Yes, worse than the Commanders right now. They're 1-2 in terms of the two worst, and they're just a team that's frankly limping into their bye week next week. Really, really need to get there. So give me some Jordan Love. Number two, Lamar Jackson. I just can't ignore the rushing upside in a division game on the road. I think that's where you want him. We've seen him get pushed on the road at Kansas City, get pushed a bit on the road at Dallas. Same thing here. I think they're going to do it again. I think Lamar is going to be, approaching 30 fantasy points. And then Brock Purdy. I like the onslaughts with the San Francisco 49ers. Can Kyler Murray push a little bit? That'd be great. That would help out Brock Purdy a lot. So Jordan Love, Lamar Jackson, Brock Purdy.
Yeah, by the way, I think you mentioned Kyler Murray. Mike, he's not going to get a ton of ownership, right? Is he? That would be kind of a contrarian play. I don't even know that I want to stack him, but that would be kind of a contrarian play, correct?
Yeah, definitely at 6,700. Like, he's more than Love, more than Purdy, more than Joe Burrow. Yeah, I can't imagine getting there. So yeah,
fair enough.
Pretty
low. Running back, what do we got?
I'm going to start with Jordan Mason. It's chalk for a good reason, though. Honestly, Jordan Mason should be priced like Christian McCaffrey was in this offense. McCaffrey, we routinely saw him at 9K, 9,200. We should be seeing bare minimum 8K, probably 8,500. So still a great value on Jordan Mason. Number 2, I've listed Kenneth Walker for now. I do worry that the game gets so out of hand that Charbonnet takes over a lot. But I do like Kenneth Walker. I think if the game gets out of hand, if it's not a DK Metcalf 80-yard touchdown, it's probably going to be from Kenneth Walker in the red zone. And then number 3, Derrick Henry. I know he's expensive. I'll be playing him a bit. I think he's fine in the end zone bare minimum once. I think that Cincinnati, that defensive front, is absolutely atrocious right now, and he is likely to run all over that team.
Could easily be a 2-touchdown game for Derrick Henry. Almost 200 yards last week, which was very impressive. All right, wide receiver.
Jaden Reed, number 1, Deontay Johnson 2, Deebo Samuel 3 for me. Jaden Reed, I just love the upside. And again, whenever you see a wide receiver 1 here from me in this section of the program, it's essentially a stack, right? It's going to be from my number 1 or 2 quarterback. So for me, it's Jaden Reed. Love stacking with Jordan Love. Deontay Johnson, for me, it's just a volume play. 27 targets in 2 games with Andy Dalton. I think they're going to be trailing. I think Andy Dalton's going to have to get the ball out quick. So give me Deontay Johnson. And then Deebo Samuel is going to be heavily involved. I think he's going to absolutely torch this Arizona defense. We're talking big plays. You mentioned 2 touchdown upside for Derrick Henry. Deebo Samuel's got multiple touchdown upside in this game for sure.
Yeah.
I hear a parlay.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely love that. All right, tight end. You had some value here.
Yeah, Tucker Kraft going to be listed number 1. Again, just the correlation in the stack with my favorite quarterback, Jordan Love here. Number 2, Eric All Jr., only 2,700. The Bengals, we know, are going to lead the NFL in pass attempts per game. It's going to continue to happen. I think it happens in this one for sure. And I think he's going to pay off that price tag because I think that they're going to see them throw the ball 50 times in this game. And then Colby Parkinson, just kind of bringing it back on the Jordan Love stuff. I think out of all the Rams pass catching options, I think he's still going to be the one that goes overlooked because of the position he plays. So give me Colby Parkinson, Tucker Kraft, Eric All Jr., Colby Parkinson.
Yeah, Parkinson does seem pretty sneaky in that game to just add into a heavy stack. All right, Mike, I want to just to get a comment or 2 on Showdown. But Meg, before I do that, I'm going to put you on the spot here. We got Thursday Night Football. We got the Buccaneers visiting the Falcons. This line opened at 2.5. Now it's down to like 1.5. Who wins this game?
I like the Bucs tonight. I do.
Yeah,
I think they
like
keep
the
rolling.
Bucs too.
Yeah.
I just think they're the better team.
I do. I think they're the better team, and I think they off that huge win against Philly. I just think they keep rolling. I like the Bucs tonight. It's kind of more of a gut feel for me on this one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why the spread is only 1.5. I mean,
exactly.
It's a coin flip for a reason. Mike, do you have a lean one way or the other, and just maybe give us a couple comments on how to play Showdown?
Yeah, slight lean to the Bucs side, but I'm really close to it here. I honestly don't think either team is very good, and I think the Falcons are fortunate. They could be 0-4 in this particular spot. So I do think that Todd Bowles will have some pressure on Kirk Cousins. He's going to have to make some quick decisions in this game. But Tampa Bay is extremely beat up. They've got multiple people on the injury report for this game. I will say I think it's the day that Bucky Irving truly surpasses Rachaad White on the depth chart. I think that on the short week here, I think this is a Bucky Irving spot. So I am in on Bucky Irving. I think he's wide receiver. I think he's running back number 1 for Tampa Bay. An interesting development in prop markets. Anytime touchdown scorer odds, he has surpassed Rachaad White in this game in that particular market. Pretty strong indication that I believe he will be RB1. Other Showdown thoughts, I mean, you have to include Bijan just because of the upside he possesses anytime he touches the ball. Chris Godwin's there for volume. As far as the punt plays, value plays, I mean, Sterling Shepard's got to be the guy, only 1,600. That, again, part of the injuries I was talking about on Tampa is definitely that wide receiver room. Sterling Shepard to me is clear wide receiver number 3 in this offense heading into tonight. As far as Atlanta pass catchers, Drake London always gets attention, big name. I think Darnell Mooney is their best wide receiver. I think Mooney is straight up better than Drake London right now. So I think that Mooney is definitely their wide receiver 1. The question mark is, can Kirk Cousins get him the ball? So guys, I'm playing a lot of Bucky Irving, Bijan, and Sterling Shepard.
That was amazing. Let me ask you this. people feel, especially newer Showdown players, feel inclined to like try to include a quarterback or both. This is going to be a slate where you're certainly not playing two quarterbacks in a lineup. For most of your lineups, I'm guessing. If you're playing one, which one is it?
Let's see. It looks like slightly more Baker. Relatively even on both. Just, not a lot of together, but slightly more Baker Mayfield. And I think some of that is just the fact that Atlanta can still run the ball a bit with Bijan and Tyler Algier. So, and they do have a better kicker. They have the good kicking game with Koo, who's definitely in play here, especially being, anytime you get to Showdown, kickers go under-owned. I think Atlanta's going to be a team that plays more conservatively, elects to kick field goals, especially indoors in a controlled environment where, as we've seen across the league, 50 to 55-yard field goals are essentially automatic this year.
Yeah, they really do seem to be automatic. All right. That was that Bucky Irving nugget, Mike, was pretty great. Anytime the prop market is adjusting, I mean, the sports books are adjusting. I mean, it's telling you everything you need to know. So appreciate you dropping that knowledge. And Greg Goose Hayes, appreciate you. He says, thanks, guys and gals. Great show as always. Best DFS show on. Really, really appreciate that. Hopefully we'll see Greg Goose Hayes and all of you in our chat next Thursday at 11. And again, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast, Spotify, Apple, wherever you enjoy your podcast. Make sure you're always hitting the like button and stuff like that. We genuinely appreciate it. Let's get some winning lineups this week. Let's get some green screens. I'm feeling pretty good after this show. Hopefully you are too. Join us next Thursday on Fantasy Football Today, DFS.